In this video, we are going to be talking about what we need to do to prepare for the upcoming year of 2024. Please keep in mind that all of this information is channeled, and there is some stuff that I did end up looking up because I just didn't know the definition of it or I didn't really know much about it. So I did look those things up and I will let you know which ones I looked up, but otherwise, the majority of this information is channeled through meditation. So if it resonates with you, then perfect, it is for you, and if not, then that's totally fine too. My name is Catherine. I'm an energy healer, spiritual coach, and nurse practitioner. If you need assistance with any of those things, you can visit my website at catherineglassman.com, or you can email me at hello@catherineglassman.com. So when I sat down to meditate on this information, I originally wanted to play around with a prediction video for 2024, right? Very mystical and fun, but I think it would mostly be fun for me. So I'm going to do that privately. Besides, it's very difficult to predict the future anyway because there is no set future. There are timelines and there are probabilities, and you can kind of give your best guess of which probability is going to be the highest for whatever timeline. But ultimately, that's what makes it so difficult to really predict the future. And besides, I don't know if that would really be helpful for a lot of people. So I decided to just ask, what is it that we need to hear and understand and know about 2024? And the response that I got was how to look ahead. Basically, it is envisioning the future that you want for yourself while also anticipating other things that can possibly happen. So basically, it's kind of having an offense while also having a defense. So first, let's talk about defense. When I asked about this specifically, what came up very clearly was that I needed to talk about predictive programming. I already had a pretty good idea of what predictive programming was. When I channeled what predictive programming is, what I got is the use of media in order to program you or to condition your mind into thinking a certain way. But that's just from my own meditation. I didn't know what the actual definition was, so I looked it up. The term predictive programming is actually coined by a man named Alan Watt, not to be confused with the philosopher Alan Watts, but Alan Watt, who is a pretty well-known conspiracy theorist apparently. So his definition is: predictive programming is a subtle form of psychological conditioning provided by the media to acquaint the public with planned societal changes to be implemented by our leaders. If and when these changes are put through, the public will already be familiarized with them and will accept them as natural progressions, thus lessening possible public resistance and commotion. Brilliant. That is a very good definition. A good definition by the man who created the term. Now, of course, a lot of people are going to consider this to be a conspiracy theory, right? But I've meditated on the subject, so I don't think it's a conspiracy theory. I truly believe that this is a real thing happening. So when I see predictive programming, it is the use of media, TV, and music to make you think a certain way. This is why they call it a television program. It's a way of desensitizing you so that one of two things will happen. Either you will just accept the information as what he says as a natural progression, or it will condition you to believing that something like that would be impossible to ever happen. So it's very similar to being exposed to something at a young age, and then later on in life, believing that that is just a normal thing to be exposed to. I think the best and most traumatic example would be assault, right? Like sexual assault, okay? It's been pretty well documented that people who participate in pornography, right? Many of them have experienced sexual assault at some point in their lifetime prior to starting in that industry. So being exposed to something at an early age, your mind doesn't really understand what it is, why it's happening, and what it's going to do to you. Okay, so your mind is just absorbing the experience. Then later on in life, if you are exposed to a similar experience, one of two things are going to happen. Either one, you're just going to accept it as a natural thing because it's happened to you before, this is familiar, it's not a big deal. Or you might have this form of great denial, or thinking that it's just impossible that that's even something that's happening. So either you will accept it or you will just flat out deny that it's even happening. But either way, the end result ends up being that you accept it into your life. And this can be said for many of things, right? So for me personally, my parents had a very particular relationship, okay? It wasn't the healthiest, but it was the only thing that I knew as an example of a marriage and of love and of a romantic relationship. And so because that was my experience, that is what I thought was normal. So going into my adult life, I ended up finding myself in relationships that were very similar to my parents, which ended up being very dysfunctional and unhealthy. But when it was happening, I didn't realize that there was something wrong with it because I had already been conditioned to believe that it was normal. And not only was I conditioned to think that it was normal, but I also had a denial that there was anything wrong with it. This is basically what predictive programming is, except it is done with the intention to make you think a certain way. Usually when people experience trauma, there was no intention to brainwash you into thinking a certain way. But predictive programming, the goals are to either have you accept it as something that's normal or to be in complete denial that it's even happening. So some of the more popular examples of this conspiracy theory would be The Simpsons. A lot of people think that The Simpsons predict certain events that happen in the world. Or how about the movie Contagion, right? The movie that talks about a great pandemic that takes over the world and they end up having to wear masks and do social distancing, right? That movie came out in 2011. Another example is the book and movie Inferno by Dan Brown. This book is about a well-known tech guru who has a lot of money, who ends up creating a virus and releases it into the water. And the plan is to sterilize 2/3 of the population. Well, a lot of people find parallels with this book/movie with the events that happened in 2020. I think the best example would be the card game that was created in 1995 called Illuminati New World Order. If you take the time to look at some of these cards, it's pretty interesting. So the question is, are these things actually predicting the future? Or is it something that was already set to happen? In my opinion and in my beliefs, I believe that these were not predictions. The Simpsons aren't predicting anything. These cards, these movies, they're not predicting anything. But there actually is a group of people, very, very powerful people, that are creating these events in society. And I think a lot of people by now are starting to question if 2020 really was an accident, which, no, it wasn't. But by creating these movies or games or shows and introducing these ideas to you already, like the idea of social distancing, right? It already starts to subconsciously prepare you for something like that to happen in real life. So it doesn't become such a shock and you just kind of go along with the plan. Now, but the other objective with predictive programming is to introduce you to ideas that seem so outrageous that you end up completely denying it if that idea is introduced to you in real life. I think the best example that I can think of is Satanism in Hollywood. There are so many music artists out there who are on stage acting like they're doing like a satanic ritual, okay? Just really dark, weird things. I mean, Doja Cat, come on. She is head to toe geared up in demon costumes, taking pictures with the word demon on it, okay? Common sense would tell you that she probably is really worshiping Satan and probably doing very dark rituals. But because the idea is so outrageous, it's just easier to be in denial about it and say, that's ludicrous, that's impossible, that's just a conspiracy theory, that's reaching. So either way, predictive programming is a win-win situation for whoever is implementing it, because you're either going to accept it or you're just going to be in denial about it. Regardless, it's not going to cause much of an uproar within you because it's not a big deal. When I decided to meditate on 2024, I did not think that predictive programming was something that I needed to talk about, but apparently it's important enough to mention, because if you like watching movies, TV, or listening to music, then you're actively being programmed. Unless you know that that exists and you keep that in the back of your mind when you're consuming this information, as in like movies and TV and things like that, then subconsciously you are being programmed. And I mean, it's happening to all of us. I enjoy movies. I like to watch TV and listen to music, but some of us are lucky enough to have an awakening and to know that this is real. And so when we do consume these things, we take everything with a grain of salt, but we also understand that they're trying to tell us something. So why is this even important? It's important because we can use this concept to our own advantage. This will help us prepare for anything to happen, because we should all know by now that anything is possible at this point. It's kind of like they're giving us the cheat codes to what might happen in the future. It's also important to understand that predictive programming actually ends up being a very smart karmic loophole. How do I explain this? So if they tell you what's going to happen, and if you end up becoming hurt or distraught or anything like that because it ends up happening, then the only person who is held responsible for that is you, because you were warned. I know, it's messed up. I don't agree with it, but it is a thing. So basically, the idea is it's like this. Let's say you are dating someone, right? And it's a brand new relationship, okay? And they tell you that they are not looking to be in a committed relationship. They don't know how serious they can be and how much emotional investment they can put into the relationship. Then you continue to date this person and a month goes by, and then you find out that they're dating someone else. Then your feelings get hurt, but whose fault is it? Well, according to this concept and law, it's your fault. Does it make it right or okay? Of course not. But they did tell you and they warned you exactly who they were and what their plans were, and you decided to ignore it and ended up getting your feelings hurt in the end because of it. So that's pretty much the concept, that if you're honest and if the person accepts this honesty and continues to go along with whatever, then that ends up becoming their ultimate responsibility. So this is how predictive programming works. As long as you get exposed to the truth, then if it really happens and it ends up affecting your life in a negative way, then it will be of your own doing. Again, I don't agree with it, but this is just apparently how it is. So when it comes to Satanism in Hollywood, right? If you're listening to certain artists that actively show you that they are performing rituals and quote unquote sell their soul, and you continue to listen to that music, and then, you start to have darker thoughts, or you just don't feel well or something like that, then that will ultimately be your responsibility. So how do we use predictive programming to our own advantage? Like I said earlier, we have to use it like cheat codes. We have to understand that the powerful groups that exist and pretty much are running the world also control the entertainment industry. And whatever they put out there, they are showing us their truth. They're showing us things that have either already happened or will possibly happen in the future. So we can use it as a way to desensitize ourselves, not in a way of accepting it into our life, but to desensitize ourselves so that it doesn't come as such a shock. The best example that I can give is somebody who watches horror movies, okay? If you take someone who watches horror movies all the time and you put them in a haunted house during Halloween, they're probably not going to react that much. But if you take someone who has never watched horror movies and you put them in a haunted house, they are probably going to get very scared and lose their composure, okay? It's pretty much the same concept. Just absorb the information from these movies and TV shows with the possibility that these things are actually real. and they're not just movies. I think the most recent movie that people are having some speculation of predictive programming is Leave the World Behind. It's the new movie that's on Netflix. I haven't seen it yet. I need to watch it. But there is some speculation out there that this is predictive programming. Now, is it? I don't know. I haven't watched the movie, so I couldn't tell you. I haven't meditated on that. What I will tell you is that there has also been recent information to come out about Mark Zuckerberg building a 5,000 square foot underground bunker in Hawaii. Apparently, there are a number of celebrities and rich people that are building bunkers for an end of the world scenario. Do what you will with that information. So in the middle of channeling this information, I felt like I was getting a lot of information on predictive programming, but I wasn't getting a lot of information about the year 2024, because that's what this whole video was supposed to be about, right? So I asked, give me one word to describe 2024. And the word that came through was unprecedented. I'll be completely honest. I didn't know the definition of this word, okay? So I looked it up. So let me share with you the definition. So unprecedented means never done or known before. I mean, it almost sounds ominous, but it doesn't mean that it's ominous. It just means unknown or never done before. I think most of us should be used to that by now. Like, geez, the past few years have just been train wreck after train wreck. And so whatever, bring it on. So turning away from our defense for 2024 and more to an offense, what is it that we can do to be proactive about 2024? And the information that came through was pretty specific. And they said to really prioritize your health, your safety, and your freedom. And they basically said this, and I say it all the time, that if you don't have your health, then it will make it more difficult to accomplish the things that you want to accomplish. Because you can have all the money in the world, but if you're bedbound because you're sick, then you don't really have that many options. I meet people in the urgent care all the time that get so distraught about missing work because they have bills to pay, and I get it. I totally understand that. But I always have to remind them, if you don't have your health, then you might not have a job at all. So it's better to just take the time and let your body heal. And because you can always find another job. If you're healthy, you can always find another job. But if you're not healthy ever, then you might end up on disability and not be able to work at all. So your health needs to become your number one priority. Even though we are spiritual beings having a human experience, we are using the human vessel to accomplish these things. And if this vessel isn't in tip-top shape, then how are you going to accomplish these things? So how do we accomplish good health? The first thing is to remove negativity from your life as much as you can. This includes people, places, the news, whatever brings negativity into your life, it's best to just remove it. And of course, you have to find a healthy balance between being informed of what's going on in the world and in your community and absorbing negative information all the time. Because absorbing negativity does degrade your health. Think about someone who's anxious all the time. I'm sure you have a friend or a family member that is just so on edge all the time, right? I would guess that they probably have health issues. And I would also guess that they probably watch the news or are on social media often. That's just a guess, okay? But you can kind of see where I'm going with this, right? You can kind of tell when someone is just anxious all the time, what their lifestyle is and what is making them anxious all the time. And that anxiety then turns into health issues because it's energy. And if you absorb enough negative energy into your auric field, then it will manifest into physical symptoms. Another way to accomplish good health is to heal your addictions with sugar, alcohol, drugs, and caffeine, which I guess all of them could just be considered to be drugs, right? When this information came through, I thought that this was just personally for me because I definitely have a problem with sugar. I've struggled with alcohol and drugs in the past, but I don't have that struggle anymore. But sugar, definitely. Caffeine, I can't really tolerate anyway. But no, it turns out that this is just a general statement for all of us. Sugar, drugs, alcohol, and caffeine. Now, they didn't say to completely eliminate it, but they said that the addiction to it needs to be healed because we need to learn how to live without it. in the case of anything happening where you don't have easy access to these things, then you will not have to deal with going through any withdrawals, because withdrawals from all of these things are pretty painful, including sugar. I've done it and it's not pretty. I guess, for example, if something were to go down and I wasn't able to just get to a grocery store and get coffee or, a sugary snack, then I would end up going through withdrawals. And if I'm going through withdrawals, then that is going to have a negative impact on my health. And I will not be very useful in such an urgent time if I'm going through withdrawals and I'm not healthy. So you don't have to completely eliminate it, but learn to live without it. Another thing they mentioned was to eliminate synthetic products. This is more of a long-term health solution, not necessarily an immediate solution, but they were basically kind of alluding to endocrine disrupting chemicals. There are a lot of synthetic products out there that have chemicals in there that disrupt our hormonal balances, especially for women. So hair care products, makeup, clothes, lotions. Apparently there's one study that showed that nylon bras are linked to breast cancer. 60% of everything that you put on your skin gets absorbed into your bloodstream. So this is something that I have to keep into consideration when I put makeup on. For that reason, I put makeup on if I'm going out or if I'm making a video, but otherwise I try not to really put very much on my skin at all. But I've already had to be proactive about this because I have a thyroid issue. So I've already been going down this journey of trying to eliminate things out of my life that could be making my thyroid worse. I've tried to eliminate the use of plastic. It's a whole journey and it's annoying and inconvenient, but nobody's gonna take care of my health except me. And you definitely can't rely on the FDA to do that for you either. But ultimately, they were really saying to live a life of minimalism and to just learn to live without the majority of the things that you have. So in the case that it were to ever be taken away, you would be okay. But adding in practices of food preservation and gardening and eating more organic foods will be a more proactive way of contributing to your immune system in a positive way. So the next one was safety. So for this, they just said to have good judgment about the places that you go and the people that you see. And the image that I got immediately were concerts. I love concerts. I love music festivals, but I will admit that within the last year, I have definitely slowed down my concert going, if not completely eliminating them altogether, which is a bummer, right? Because I love music and I love hanging out, but I don't know. I don't know what it is. I don't know why they gave me that image of concerts and music festivals, but they just said to have good judgment about the places you go and the people that you see. I think probably because when you go to concerts, right, you're usually drinking. And when you're drinking, you don't have the best judgment. And if something happens in a place where there is a lot of people then who are also all under the influence of something, then that can present to be a very dangerous situation. Now, of course, they're not saying, and I'm not saying, to not go to concerts, okay? I'm just telling you what I saw in meditation. That's just the image that they gave me. And I'm just sharing it with you. I think ultimately, if you do decide to do anything, that you always have a plan. It seems overzealous and silly to always know where your exits are until you need to know where they are. And even if you're not going out in public spaces, then to always have a plan regardless of anything that could happen. Do you have a plan if your town floods? Do you have a plan if a tornado hits? If there's a wildfire? Of course, not all of us are going to be able to build a bunker in Hawaii, and that's okay. But we have to build something or have a plan with the things that we do have. And over time, we can slowly add things to our arsenal of protective equipment. Since my awakening, I've often gotten visions through meditation of things that I needed to be prepared for. And sure, it makes me sound crazy and I look a little crazy, but I would rather look and sound crazy and be prepared than look and sound normal and not be prepared at all. I went as far as to change my tires. I have extra gasoline in the garage. I have dehydrated food, I have go packs, I have battery packs, I have solar panels, weapons, cash on hand, precious metals on hand. I even went as far as to take out money from my 401k, roll it into a self-directed IRA so that I can buy land. And now I have it's not a lot, but I have a little bit of land where I can go to in case something happens. My partner has a travel trailer and a generator. It sounds like it's a lot, but I mean, I don't know why I keep getting these visions, but I do. And I've learned to respect them. So that's what I've done. And the last thing that they wanted to talk about was freedom. Make freedom a priority. And what they meant specifically about freedom is freedom of your mind. Again, it's finding that balance between staying informed about the world and not allowing it to have a negative influence on you or to program you into thinking in a certain way. It's having the freedom to, even though hear about all of this information, to still stay positive and to manifest the life that you want. I think the reason why they wanted to talk about all of the preparation and doom and gloom things is because if you are prepared for any of those things, then you ultimately will stay free. If you're prepared for everything, you cannot be a prisoner to anything. You can take in information, you can even take in things that people say about what you're doing and what your goals are. You can take it all in, but still choose, because you have the freedom to go after whatever it is that you want anyway. This is preparing for the worst while also going after your goals of the best. And it's ultimately adopting an attitude of failure is not an option, because as long as I'm prepared and nothing is going to get in my way, then that really is true freedom. Freedom to make choices with your own body, freedom to move about the country or the world, financial freedom, whatever it is, failure is not an option because I'm prepared for the worst. So bring it. Now that I understand the definition, I guess these are unprecedented times. So I'll end with a quote by Marcus Aurelius, which is, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." So 2024 is going to be interesting, but we're ready. We have a new frequency to get to and nothing is going to get in our way. So I hope you liked the video. Give it a thumbs up if you did. Consider subscribing, and I will see you next time in 2024. Bye.